We're now hearing a lot about the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Now, in today's video, what we're going to do is take a very critical review of that statement and talk about the other characteristics that are common to hospitalized or people that have severe COVID or even die. And vaccination status actually doesn't come first to mind. As you can see in some of these images that I recently grabbed from major media outlets like WebMD, like CNN, and local news outlet, Como 4 News or something like that, somewhere in Orlando. There was another news outlet, MSNBC. So I've captured some screenshots of images of perfectly healthy people, according to WebMD and CNN and local media outlets. Now, when you see these images, they have common features. And those common features to some pundits in the media and politicians are they're unvaccinated. But to the average person, there's different features that are actually really telling by these pictures. And that's the fact that these individuals are clearly metabolically sick. Now, in this video is not to fat shame, and we're not going to fat shame people in this podcast and talk about, oh my gosh, they deserve to die, they deserve to get really sick. What we're going to focus in on is solutions above and beyond what we've been hearing about from the experts and the media and the pundits and the gurus and the public health officials. We haven't yet heard anything about weight loss. We haven't, although Dr. Fauci did mention that in 2019. I'll play that clip so you can hear that.
Prevent getting an infectious disease and having to have you as my doctor is what? Wearing a mask?
No.
You do that? If somebody's, I can see they're getting ready to sneeze or cough, walk away.
You avoid all the paranoid aspects and do something positive. A, good diet. B, you don't smoke, I know. I know you don't drink, at least not very much, so that's pretty good. Get some exercise. I know that you don't get as much exercise as you should.
That's correct.
Get good sleep. I think that the normal, low-tech, healthy things are the best thing that you can do, David, is stay healthy.
All right, well, I'm going to try to do that, and hopefully when I next see you, I will be even healthier than I am today.
I would imagine you would be, and I look forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Now, isn't that clip interesting? I honestly believe if Dr. Anthony Fauci would have said that in March of 2020, this whole pandemic would be over. People would be more healthy. The children would have gained the weight. They would not have gained the weight that they've gained. Your aunt, your uncle, your friends, and all the people in your life who have become more unhealthy as a direct result of our own policies would not be as unhealthy as they are now. We've made people more unhealthy. The data is here in children, in adults, and so forth. And we now know, here's a research article here in Nature Reviews Endocrinology last September. Will the COVID-19 pandemic worsen the obesity epidemic? The answer is yes, unequivocally yes at this point. And other articles go on to say, the obesity paradox predicts a second wave of COVID-19 to be severe in Western countries. Now I think we're on the third or fourth. I don't even know what wave. I think it's the third wave. Now, we've ignored the fact that our stay-home orders, closing gyms, closing schools while keeping fast food restaurants open, canceling sports, and closing parks, we've ignored the fact that our own interventions may have had unintended harms, and those unintended harms may have made people more vulnerable. And we're continuing to ignore this. While politicians and so forth are creating mandates, businesses are being forced to immunize individuals, even if individuals like myself are at very low risk for COVID, or even if individuals like you have already had COVID and you have natural immunity and you're at not increased risk for dying or being hospitalized, your employer is now forcing you to get immunized. Well, is your employer removing the vending machines? Is your employer no longer going to serve Coca-Cola at company picnics and retreats? Are there sporting events that are requiring a vaccine passport, like football games here in Seattle, Washington? You need to show proof of immunizations. I can buy a pretzel that's like this big, bigger than my head. I can drink unlimited amount of beer in there, get hammered and cause diabetes and whatever else by going to these games. But our society continues to ignore this chronic disease epidemic. Now, we continue to vilify, we continue to talk about it's the unvaccinated. We ignore the rampant obesity. We ignore the obesity in the 16-year-old girl here who is clearly morbid obese, as well as the other 16-year-old girl here on the right. The lady in the middle, we're going to hear from her and review an article from WebMD that completely ignored the fact that she's morbidly obese. They completely ignored the fact. CNN's Don Lemon ignored the fact that this man here, a 51-year-old man, he's obese. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Again, we're not trying to vilify people. We're trying to have different conversations because we know that the push from the Biden administration is actually so hard towards vaccinations that he's actually caused two of his top vaccine officials from the FDA to resign. This is news that you may not have been aware of. This was September 2nd. He's pushing booster shots so hard and mandating vaccines that people are like, whoa, you're jumping ahead of the science here. Now, what the science is clearly showing is that we have worsened people's metabolic health and made them more vulnerable. So it's time that we start having these better conversations, because you can look at the trends right here. This is trends here in the United States of America. This is deaths due to COVID-19. If you look here at April 10th, 2020, there was the 7-day rolling death average was 1,800 deaths per day. If you look here at September 10th, and actually it's worse now, it's more like 1,800 per day, we are actually experiencing more deaths now due to COVID-19 than we did at the start of the pandemic. And we're approaching winter levels, and it's not even winter yet. In fact, the daily death average is more than twice what it is now compared to the same time period last year. Again, when are we going to have better conversations about this? Immunizations here in the US we've had more adults and more vulnerable people vaccinated than ever before. So again, this video is not about anti-vaccines. This video is about, well, gosh, it seems like we've been doing everything the experts said, except focusing on health. We've stayed in our houses. We've washed our hands. We've done the masking. We've socially distanced. We've did all this. More and more people now are getting vaccinated than ever before. And the numbers are not reflecting that those factors, those mitigation strategies, are changing the situation. So we have made people worse. Here's an image about what the mechanism of action through which social distancing and isolations and canceling school and all that, how that actually worsens obesity, how that worsens risk for COVID-19. And so these are scientists talking about this. This is in the journal Nature Reviews Endocrinology. This is not some far-fetched thing. So what politicians should actually be talking about is, why are we still subsidizing ultra-processed junk food? Why are we making hyper-palatable foods artificially cheaper than fruits and vegetables? Why aren't we subsidizing avocados, olives, nuts and seeds, and healthy grass-fed meat and things like that? Yet we're subsidizing corn, wheat, soy, all these industrial seed oils. If you look at Joe Biden's voting record, he's voted yes on the Farm Bill every single year since 2003. The Farm Bill, if you don't know, it's a way that the government subsidizes commodity crops like corn, like wheat, like soy, and all the things that go and make that bag of M&Ms that is like 2,000 calories per bag, the monster bag you see at the store. It's like $3.99. You're like, how is that possible? There's coloring agents. They're individually wrapped in a big bag and all this. And it's like, it's dirt cheap. You can't even buy an avocado damn near for $2.99. And then you just pick it off a tree. So if we're going to be serious about saving lives and we're going to blame the unvaccinated, why are we still subsidizing commodity crops that make people more vulnerable to this very disease? And actually, what we now know of data from Italy that we've covered on this podcast, visceral adiposity, belly fat, is linked with suboptimal vaccine protectiveness, a decline in antibodies as is smoking and high blood pressure. So this is not just me saying this. We know that there's this, it's impossible to disentangle the chronic disease, the obesity, the rampant diabetes with this virus. We know that obesity and outcomes in COVID-19, this is a title from Mayo Clinic, friends. Again, this isn't the Journal of Conspiracy Theories. This is Mayo Clinic. Obesity and outcomes in COVID-19. When an epidemic and a pandemic collide. Okay, so we have a high percentage of very vulnerable people that are then exposed to this pathogen. And we think that we can ignore their vulnerabilities and just give them the substance that's going to cure everything. Well, guess what, friends? It doesn't appear that that's necessarily working. So we continue to blame the smaller and smaller percentage of the unvaccinated people for all of the problems that we've created in our society. I can now go in 5 minutes or less, have a 5,000 calorie meal delivered to my door. So can you. You can go have soda, French fries, and all of this. And Jack in the Box, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, the drive-through lines, I've never seen them busier. I'm sure you've seen the same. We continue to ignore that. We closed the gyms. We've restricted people. We discouraged exercise because people were told that they're going to get super sick. We're going to hear from people that have been hospitalized very soon from CNN. And again, I hear this all the time. I did everything right. I socially distanced. I had my little, cluster of people that were also socially distancing and masking, and yet I still got COVID-19. So as we continue on here, this is an article in Nature Reviews Endocrinology. Again, Nature is among one of the highest reputable, high-impact journals, and their sub-journals like endocrinology or neurology or cardiology, they're sub-journals within Nature. Great article, so you can find this one for free. Global Pandemics Interconnected, Obesity, Impaired Metabolic Health, and COVID-19. So again, what politicians and the media and society at large is, they're making the same mistake that the entire medical system has made for the past 100 years. Since the discovery of the germ theory of disease, the entire medical system has focused on, and doctors have been trained to treat acute illness. You have a laceration, you have a burn, you have an infection. There's no better healthcare system in the world for which you can get treated outside of the United States. I mean, literally, for acute care stuff, trauma, you cut your arm off, whatever, please don't start intermittent fasting when your arm is bleeding. Go to the emergency room. You get in a car accident, that is what medical professionals are trained to treat. But when it comes to chronic disease management, we know that nutrition and lifestyle factors are often as much or more important than drugs and surgery when it comes to treating and ameliorating the deleterious effects of these chronic conditions that develop as a result of poor diet and lifestyle choices. It's no surprise that these major healthcare settings, they're not equipped to manage and to help treat patients with diet and lifestyle induced diseases. So therefore, our system is sort of broken, and that's why nutrition has become so popular and fitness has become so popular, and the emergence of CrossFit and paleo diet and the ketogenic diet and all that is so popular because people realized for the first time that they could change their body and reduce their susceptibility to developing these diseases. Now, as a society, we are myopically focused on mitigating transmissible diseases, and we continue to ignore. Every day it gets worse and worse. We're going to look at school menus here in a minute. It's going to blow your mind what my daughter's school, although we make her lunch, of course, at home with whole real food, but what they're feeding the kids. Yet the kids have all these crazy protocols for masking and washing the hands and this and that. Yet they feed, whole wheat cinnamon buns for breakfast and fish sticks for lunch and chocolate milk and the whole thing. So it's like our society right now, and the politicians and policymakers and businesses, unfortunately, are making the very mistake that the healthcare system made over 100 years ago, and ignoring nutrition and lifestyle and exercise as therapeutic, holistic strategies that can improve health while focusing just on microbes and transmission. Okay. So let's get into this story. Actually, before we get into it, I do just want to welcome back our new listeners. It's Mike Mutzel. I'm grateful that you're here. So if you're enjoying this content and you're going to enjoy what we're going to get into shortly with the science, I would appreciate it if you could leave a comment and hit that like button. You know what that does? That tells the YouTube algorithm that, hey, if you're enjoying these videos, I should show this to other people like you. So that really helps get the message that we need to make healthy living great again. If you're on iTunes, you can please leave us a little bit of feedback. That really helps. Now, as we continue on and talk about whole body health, I do just want to mention one factor that is really important, and that is your vitamin D status. We now know that vitamin D is so important for so many different factors, and supporting and maintaining a high level of vitamin D between 39 nanograms per ml up to 60 has been shown to be helpful by various studies for all sorts of conditions, optimizing health. So our sister company has a lot of solutions for you and your family. And it's important to support your vitamin D levels, especially this time of year, because if you notice, the days are getting shorter and the sun is getting lower in the sky as we approach fall and winter. What that means in complex jargon science terms is a zenith angle of the sun is insufficient to induce cutaneous vitamin D synthesis in your skin. So therefore you need to get it exogenously, either from food or supplements. And most people are not eating cod liver or getting vitamin D from whole real food. So I suggest supplementing, and we have a lot of solutions for you. So you can check out the new vitamin D3 gummies that are great for kids. Your whole family will enjoy. There's liquids and there's soft gels with vitamin K2 as well. So you can support your body's vitamin D levels by going over to myoscience.com. That's MYOXCIENCE.com, myoscience.com. Use the coupon code podcast at checkout to save. Okay, let's dive into this article from WebMD. I think this is interesting. WebMD is a very up-to-date health website, about medicine and health and drugs and healthy living. They have news and experts and all this. I'm reading to you from their menu here. Okay, so this was a story that my friend Tina Moore sent over to me. This was a high-profile TikTok creator that unfortunately died from COVID-19. So I feel bad for Alexandra. She was only 31 years old. I believe she has children. As you can see here from this picture, you're like, okay, I think she looks to be carrying a little bit of an extra weight and so on. But I went on to see these videos and more videos of Alexandra. Now, it's obvious that she's obese. Okay, now bless her heart, but the media and WebMD never mentioned that. They never mentioned, all they did was criticize the fact that she did not yet get immunized. Now, I would agree with WebMD and the other media outlets here. Individuals in Alexandra's position should definitely get immunized. If you resemble her body composition and have morbid obesity and associated health issues, I would imagine that she as a result of that, then you're at higher risk for dying, of having severe disease, ending up in the hospital. And that is exactly what these immunizations have been shown to do, is reduce disease severity in high-risk individuals and aged individuals. So these individuals, there should be risk stratification in the recommendations and the mandates for the vaccines. If you're high risk, if you're like Alexandra and a lot of Americans who have neglected your health, it's highly suggested that you get the vaccine. But what about all the other people that are healthy, that have had COVID and didn't have severe disease? Why are we making them get the vaccine? How is that based upon science? This should be a more nuanced approach based upon age and risk, in my estimation, when it comes to mandates and much more. So here she is. Here's Alexandra. Let's hear what the media has to say about her and how they literally ignored the fact that she has other health issues going on, which, by the way, if you've ever been in or around a hospital, I was a pre-med undergrad, so I spent over a year and a half volunteering in an emergency room. You know, the type of people that you see. Ask any doctor you see in the ICU or in the ER. It's usually people that have overdosed on drugs. You have a small percentage of accidents and acute care stuff, but a lot of chronic health issues, a lot of obesity, diabetic issues, renal failure, wounds and chronic illness, right? You see that. Okay. So that was true long before COVID. That's been true during COVID. The vast majority of people that have been hospitalized, ventilated in the ICU have chronic health issues, have overweight or obesity. There are a small percentage of so-called healthy people, but we need to understand here, again, we're not just vilifying the visibly overweight. We said before, 30% of normal weight individuals have metabolic obesity. They're fat on the inside. You just can't see that. So again, a large percentage of our population is vulnerable, but we're doing nothing about the vulnerabilities in terms of on a policy level. So here we go with Alexandra.
An unvaccinated TikTok creator who died of the coronavirus spent her final days pleading with her followers to get the vaccine. 31-year-old Megan Alexandra Blankenbiller died on August 24th, just 9 days after she made her final TikTok video in which she urged viewers to protect themselves from COVID-19.
I shouldn't have waited, I think, because hopefully if you get it, then you won't end up in the hospital like me, okay?
So of course, that's sad. We don't wish Alexandra or anyone to pass. We're not saying she deserved it. We're just saying, gosh, if someone like Anthony Fauci, who had the poll, and we shared with you that video that he talked about in 2019 about these low-tech mitigation strategies, eating real food, exercising, quitting smoking, balancing alcohol, not all the hyperbole and all the sensation. Imagine if he would have said that, how many more lives could be saved? So a lot of people get mad at me or folks like me promoting healthy living, but they don't get mad about the fact that these health experts are omitting these recommendations. They're not including these recommendations in their guidance. And so here is, this is Don Lemon of CNN, okay? So Don Lemon has been very critical of someone like myself who has unvaccinated because I have natural immunity. And we know that rates of a reinfection are actually 13 times lower, lower odds than are rates of a breakthrough case in comparing natural immunity to fully immunized. So I'm going to be a little bit critical of Don here. Don appears to have some man boobs going on. He also appears to have a little bit of a tummy. So Don, if you're going to be critical of other people, we have the right to be critical of you. So you have some work to do, I would say, on your own physique. Just saying. Now, here's Don. He is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he's from. And again, he's interviewing people. And let's pay attention to what they say. So he's going on here in the hospital.
Louisiana has the worst COVID case rates in the country. It's also near the top of the list when it comes to hospitalizations. I was born in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, at this very hospital. So I came home to see what was happening for myself.
Let's pause right there. Again, what scientists have shown is that we've actually made people more vulnerable, more overweight. Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, all these different states and so forth have guess what? They already had morbid obesity and high obesity rates to begin with. I think there's evidence now, and the science is showing this, that we've actually probably made people more vulnerable. So Don goes into the hospital and he interviews this guy.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah?
Doing a lot better.
You and your brother were here?
Yes, sir.
What happened?
we just got COVID and got sick, and we went to the hospital in the Ritter, and they didn't have no place for us to send us down here. He come down 2 days before me, and he left yesterday going home.
I was shocked when they said I had COVID.
Why?
I don't go anywhere. We have been quarantining, disinfecting, doing everything that we're supposed to do.
This is so common, by the way. Still got it.
And I still ended up with the virus.
Let's continue on here and just pause and sort of reflect on some of the things that were said. So first of all, CNN mentioned nothing about the body composition of these hospitalized individuals. Maybe they could have done it in a constructive way. Said, hey, look, it appears that there's a commonality amongst these individuals that we interviewed. Overweight, obesity. Maybe we should highlight some studies that have actually shown, like all the studies that we've talked about on this podcast over the past 18 months, talking about, well, obesity and exercise and all these things. Like, there's things we can do. And we're going to cut to this paper right here. Actually, physical activity may mitigate COVID-19 infections in people with obesity, a call to action from well-recognized public health authors and so forth, a myriad of different universities. And so they talk about how the established relationship between physical activity and immune function has the potential to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 and improve, and I want to highlight this, improve vaccine response in all people. Okay, so we're promoting vaccines like crazy. In fact, Biden is promoting them so hard, as we talked about, that his individuals from his own FDA are resigning because he's really getting ahead of himself with these mandates and these booster shots, and people that have been working within the FDA vaccination approval committee for decades are quitting. Okay, so you're like, well, why are we, if we're so excited about immunizations, shouldn't we be promoting exercise as well? Like, hey, look, we can really enhance the efficacy of these things if we also promote exercise at the same time. I think a lot of people could get behind that message. And if we're serious about saving lives, that obviously could improve the effectiveness and so forth. So they go on to say, in response to the pandemic, physical activity has declined, especially among low-income individuals. Speaking of low-income individuals, they're also eating ultra-processed, hyper-palatable junk food. Here is the menu for my daughter's school. For those of you that are interested, and we live in a fairly affluent area, Kirkland, Washington. You know, the average, you can't even get into this area now, which is sad because I bought my first home when I was 24. And had I not invested in real estate early on, it would have changed the trajectory of my life. And I really feel for these young, out of college kids and so forth in their 20s, it's going to be hard to get into the market. This market's absolutely bananas. And so you would think that due to the tax base that they're drawing off here, the public schools would be able to afford to feed kids healthier food. But here's the menu, okay? So the menu here is yogurt with graham crackers. So healthy. I mean, every kid needs graham crackers for breakfast. Chocolate chip breakfast round. Sounds like the most healthy thing you could ever give a kid before school. I mean, it's just fantastic. Let's continue on here. I like this whole grain cinnamon roll. Every kid needs to start their day with a cinnamon roll. I mean, my gosh, this is like the epitome of health here. Mini maple waffles. I mean, it's awesome. If you think breakfast is fantastic, you're going to love the lunch options here. Fish sticks and chips. Amazing. I mean, every kid should have fish sticks every day. I mean, these are like the healthiest things that kids could possibly eat. Taco Tuesday with ground turkey, soft tacos, they have pork tacos, whole grain rolls. I mean, of course, we need more whole grains in our life. Absolutely. So there's all sorts of cheesy bread stick with marinara sauce for lunch. I mean, this is like the healthy, this is amazing. They're just so fantastic and healthy. My gosh. Oh, here's even better for lunch. I mean, if you thought all these options were check this out. We have French toast sticks and sausage in a chicken burger. I mean, I couldn't even come up with healthier options if I tried. I mean, good job, school. Now, are we surprised then? Kids are eating these low-income children, and then we're surprised that they're getting hospitalized. Like that young boy that we saw, the 14-year-old boy on the first image here. Again, you're a byproduct of your environment. If your parents in the school is feeding you this, and you become overweight, and you have cardiovascular disease as a result, you have chronic inflammation, you're on the path of developing pre-diabetes, and then eventually dementia and Alzheimer's, are we surprised that you're getting hit hard by a virus? I'm not surprised. Are we surprised that we see those 16-year-old kids who have morbid obesity, yet they don't yet have any diagnosable diseases, but clearly they have some manifestation of a disease brewing, And yet they're getting hospitalized. Yet we're ignoring that. We don't even talk, WebMD didn't even talk about that with that Alexandra story. And we've talked about this before. The children that were disproportionately affected as a result of the school closures and the stay-home orders and all this sort of stuff were the children between the ages of 5 and 11. They've gained more weight than any other age group, okay, unfortunately, as a result of this. Then this paper came out, and we talked about this in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Trends in Consumption of Ultra-Processed Food. It's increased in the last 5, 6, 10 years, and it's probably even worsened now. Like, when you pick your kid up from school, you're like, wow, it's incredible, and it's sad, the rampant obesity, yet we're mandating shots, but we don't even talk about the access to ultra processed foods and the vending machines and these terrible menus at schools. So this article found, this was published in August of this year, we covered this already, that 60% of the calories that the kids are eating is from ultra processed junk food. So we have many doctors, many scientists, many researchers talking about how it's impossible to disentangle chronic disease from vulnerability to the pandemic, and no politician is even talking about that. Again, Dr. Fauci mentioned this. If he would have echoed these statements in 2020, the pandemic would be over by now. It would have been over. We'd have 20 months. That's plenty of time to make massive improvements. Here's yet another study validating what we've been talking about the whole time. The title of this is A Protective Role of Physical Activity Patterns Prior to COVID-19 Confinement with the Severity Duration of Respiratory Pathologies Consistent with COVID-19 Symptoms in Spanish Populations. So this was a study of over 420 patients in Spain, and they found that, guess what? People who participated in exercise 150 minutes per week, and also, the more strength training, the better, they had a statistically significant lower odds, very significant lower odds of having a severe disease, of dying, or getting hospitalized from COVID-19. So this is not, friends, we've been talking about this since April, okay? I shared with you the Kaiser Permanente study of over 48,000 subjects that found that people that met their regular physical fitness requirements had a much lower risk of odds of dying, of needing ventilators and all of that. We reviewed the study from Sweden that actually found that individuals that went into the military and had objective standardized physical fitness tests, what they found is that individuals who worked out and had high fitness levels as teens had even reduced risk of dying way later in life from COVID-19. We reviewed the data from South Korea, and that study actually showed that people, they looked at electronic medical records and all of this, and they found, I think that was like 200,000 subjects. They found similar findings. We reviewed data from the Henry Ford Hospital outside of Detroit that looked at cardiorespiratory fitness tests and found that individuals that had high levels of cardiorespiratory fitness had a much lower odds of dying. I mean, the studies go on and on and on, and I'm writing a book about this to summarize all this stuff, but it's just sad that these things are not being talked about by the media. We just keep hearing about more and more about immunizations. Well, what Joe Biden says right here is this is the pandemic of the unvaccinated, yet, and he talks about how the shots make you safe, which I agree. Okay, it's fine. We know that. We know that data to be true, but there's other things too that can make you safe. And we continue to pick on the people that have natural immunity. We continue to pick on individuals who are at low risk, who've decided to not get the immunizations, because what these shots do, friends, they don't completely block transmission. Again, this isn't an anti-vaccine message, YouTube gods. This is Dr. Rochelle Walensky right here saying that same thing. And that's why masks are recommended indoors. So here's her I just want to back up what I just said so I don't get shut down by YouTube. So check this out.
The thing that's important, and that is new data that we've seen just in the last several days, but corroborated several times, is that if you are vaccinated and you are one of those rare breakthrough infections, you actually have the capacity to pass it to somebody else.
Again, we're not saying that the vaccines are not working. We are saying they're working, but what do? The science shows they reduce disease severity and probability of death in the individuals who get them. Okay? If you've already had COVID and you're still alive and you didn't end up in the hospital, why do you need to get a vaccine? I mean, what science shows that you can't live your life without that? You've been living your life after COVID. You have natural immunity, you have T-cell immunity, and so forth. So Joe Biden confirms essentially what I'm saying here, and this is what the science shows, is they protect you, the individual. They don't block transmission. So here's Joe Biden.
But as the science makes clear, if you're fully vaccinated, you're highly protected from severe illness, even if you get COVID-19. In fact, recent data indicates there is only one confirmed positive case per 5,000 fully vaccinated Americans per day. You're as safe as possible.
So if you're as safe as possible, why are we requiring businesses to mandate the vaccines for 80 million individuals if we know that the vaccinated are as safe as possible from getting COVID-19 or having a severe illness from it? I literally just I can't wrap my head around this. And that's why, of course, I'm not agreeing with these mandates. People of high risk and advanced age should get the vaccines. Individuals who are at low risk, probably like you and some people in your life and your children, why are we making them get these immunizations? That's what I just don't understand, friends, especially as we continue to ignore all of the other things that are making people more vulnerable. We continue to ignore all of the factors that could actually enhance the efficacy of these immunizations. And that's, again, it's just sort of interesting. So what I would like to do to encourage you to continue in your educational quest is I will link some of the studies that we talked about today. I will link this video. I will link the show notes. I'm grateful that you tuned all the way in. We need to think differently. As Albert Einstein said, you can't approach a problem with the same sort of vantage that you did or that you've used to create the problem. We need to start to think differently. And look, we've been listening to the experts. We've been doing all the distancing, hand washing, etc. And like that lady that was hospitalized for the virus said, she did everything right and she still got it. Friends, this virus is now in every single corner of planet Earth. Even countries and islands like New Zealand and Australia, they couldn't even keep COVID out. Even though they closed their borders, people haven't seen their family for over 18 months now, okay? So the solution going forward partly should depend upon our own health and reducing our vulnerabilities through exercise, stress reduction, eating whole real food, quitting smoking, as Dr. Anthony Fauci mentioned, and managing sleep and prioritizing sleep and relationships and all of these things. So we need to make healthy living part of this conversation. Hopefully this video, this podcast will give you some more tools to have better conversations with your friends and family in terms of promoting healthy living, because I know it's hard for people to grasp this because most of the experts have not really addressed it. So thanks for tuning all the way in. I'm grateful that you were here. Thanks for hitting that like button. Thank you for subscribing, and we will catch you on a future video down the road. Bye now.